What is up, ladies and gentle nerds? It's your boy Graham, also known as HamHawks42 on the internet, and today we are looking at a card from Kaldheim, and it's going to be a special one, everybody. If you enjoy this, please don't hesitate to give it a thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube, and while you're down there, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. It makes a huge difference. And if you're listening to this, wherever you get your podcasts, if you wouldn't mind giving us a 5-star review, that'd be fantastic. So let's go ahead and get on into it. Today we are looking at Valky, God of Lies. It is a legendary creature god. It is a 2/1 for a 1 and a black. When Valky enters the battlefield, each opponent reveals their hand. For each opponent, exile a creature card they revealed this way until Valky leaves the battlefield. And then later on, at any time, you can pay X. Choose a creature card to exile with Valky with converted mana cost X. Valky becomes a copy of that card. So I love the design of this. It's similar to Acquisitions Expert, which is a 1/2 for 2. It's 1 and a black. But instead of forcing them to discard a single card, you're actually removing a creature from their hand. But it's only temporary. If Valky were to be killed, which, let's be honest, that's going to happen a lot because it's only a 1/2, and it doesn't have any kind of indestructible or any other kind of way of protecting itself. Valky is in a lot of cases just going to bite it really darn fast. But if it survives for a little while, you pull a card out of your opponent's hand, so that you're restricting you're stripping them of a resource for as long as Valky remains on the battlefield, and then Valky can become a copy of one of those creatures. So can you imagine removing somebody's questing beast out of their hand and turning Valky into a copy of it? That'd be fantastic. Not to mention removing other Kaldheim gods, for example. Also, I want to point out a fun fact. The Theros gods, which I can't help but think about. Every time I look at the Kaldheim gods, I can't help but think about the Theros gods because they're both gods. They function very differently, and they're going to be in standard at the same time. With the Theros gods, they are creatures when they're in your opponent's hand, so Valky can remove them. And Valky could become a copy of one. Now, it would be interesting because the moment he becomes a copy of, say, Heliod, if you don't have the devotion to white, you would immediately get an enchantment. He would stop being a creature, which could be kind of fun depending on what kind of situation you're in. But all in all, I don't know that that's going to come up very frequently. I think it's far more likely that you're going to be removing Brushfire Elementals, Questing Beasts, Lovestruck Beasts, any one of the Rogue package. You could, flip side is it would be possible to turn Mill Rogues on its head and, steal your opponent's Ruin Crab and get a Ruin Crab on your side of the board as quickly as turn 3. Quite comfortably, and that could be really useful. The other cool thing is you can spend mana of any color to pay X, so that's really handy. You're not tied to the color of the removed creature, which is pretty cool. So that's all great, and this is a really cool card on its own, but the best part about this is it is a god from Kaldheim, which means it is a modal double-faced card. So let's go ahead and take a look at the backside. Wait a minute, it's Tibalt, the Cosmic Imposter. That's right, Tibalt is back, and hopefully not a joke this time. So let's see. Tibalt is a legendary planeswalker for 5 black red, so we got a Rakdos Tibalt this time. Excellent. As Tibalt enters the battlefield, you get an emblem with you may play cards exiled with Tibalt Cosmic Imposter, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast those spells. So right away, you get an emblem upon entering the battlefield. Tibalt has an ETB effect that gives you an emblem. Now that alone, if I'm not mistaken, this is the first time we've seen anything like this. Chandra Awakened Inferno has a +1 that gives an emblem, which is the only other situation in which I can think of an emblem being this easy to acquire. And it allows you to play cards that are exiled with Tibalt regardless of how they get exiled. So let's go ahead and take a look at the loyalty abilities and see how we're going to be exiling cards. You can +2 to exile the top card of each player's library. Okay, that's great. You can also -3 to exile target artifact or creature. So you can remove a creature from the battlefield or an artifact from the battlefield and then play it using mana of any color. That's amazing. So basically you can steal your opponent's best artifact or creature for its mana cost, is what that ends up being. Because Tibalt comes down with 5 loyalty, you can -3, exile a thing, and then immediately play play that thing for its mana cost if you have that much mana lying around. Or if Tibalt's been around for a little while, that wouldn't be that hard to pull off at all. And then Tibalt has an ultimate, -8, exile all cards from all graveyards, then add red, red, red to your mana pool. That's delightful. So you could then cast any card from any graveyard, and you have 3 mana to put towards that right away. That's a really cool effect. I gotta say, Tibalt Cosmic Imposter is a late game threat that can do a lot. I also love that the +2 ability is chaotic in its own way. You have an opportunity, you're exiling your top card and your opponent's top card. And so in a way, it's drawing you 2 cards effectively because you're able to cast them with mana of any color, which also provides mana fixing, incidentally enough, on your own cards, which is kind of fun. This also scales beautifully to Commander. If you're in a multiplayer pod, both sides of this card scale to having more than one opponent. Every instance of an opponent says each opponent, not target opponent, or each player, not target player. So it scales beautifully. All in all, I gotta say, it's really nice to see Tibalt as a force to be reckoned with. It's nice to see a powerful version of Tibalt finally, that said, it's a 7-mana planeswalker. So if it wasn't a part of this modal DFC, if Valky God of Lies was not also attached to this card, I would say that Tibalt is probably borderline unplayable in most formats, only because getting a planeswalker that drops at 7 that isn't Ugin, which I know costs 8, but if you're spending that much on anything, Ugin costs 8, but it has a board wipe attached to it the moment it drops. And in some decks, that's an asymmetrical board wipe. So that power level is significantly higher than what we're seeing with Tibalt here. But I think Valky is a very playable card, and Tibalt is a top-end threat that could be very useful and very effective if it's in the late game. So in the early game, you have Valky at your disposal. In the late game, you have Tibalt at your disposal, both of which do similar effects. At the end of the day, both of them are exiling cards and allowing you to use them in some way. And so I think flavorfully, this thing is spot on. Also, fun fact, this card gets around the idea of Planeswalkers in the command zone because on its front face, its default face, it is a legendary creature. So you are able to play Valky God of Lies as your commander, and you are able to cast it as Tibalt. So that's a fun fact. That said, the commander tax applies to both sides, depending on whichever. So if you do play Valky God of Lies as the commander and it gets killed, and then you go to play Tibalt later, it's going to cost you 9, not 7. So that's something to keep in mind. It really adds a level of strategy to a commander game that I really dig, to the point where I kind of want to build this guy now as I'm saying this. All in all, I'm really impressed. I feel like they got this one right, which is really delightful. The other cool thing about the modal DFCs, you'll notice all the gods are modal DFCs. Prior to this, we saw Halvar, God of Battle, and the backside was an equipment. And here we have a black god where the backside is a planeswalker. We've also seen another one that got released today where the other side, if I'm not mistaken, it's a creature. It's a different creature, so you can have 2 creatures, like one low-cost creature and one high-cost creature, which is kind of fun. There's a lot of variance in these gods that we've seen so far, and I really like it. But at the end of the day, they all have a front face and a back face, and you get to pick which one you're casting as you cast it. And they also did a great job. This is something that they introduced with Zendikar, with the DFC lands, but I do want to point out one of the cool things about these double face cards is they have reminder text on the bottom to just remind you what's on the other side. So as you're looking at Tibalt Cosmic Imposter, it'll say God 1 and a black. So you can see the mana cost and just to remind you, it's a god on the other side. Then when you look at the other side where you see Valky God of Lies, it says Tibalt on the other side. It's got its subtype, and then and then 5 black, red, it's mana cost right there. So I gotta say, that is just a clever design. It's really well done. So that way, if you have the card in the wrong direction in your sleeve when you start the game, you can still play the card, knowing that it's mana cost, and just flip it when you play it, which I appreciate. Also, it's interesting, fun fact with the DFCs, one is the official front face, and the other, so like this card is, the legal name on this card is Valky God of Lies. That is like the official front face of this card, whereas Tibalt Cosmic Imposter is considered the back face. It's still, if you look it up like on Gatherer, it'll still show, you'll be able to find it with both sides. Both are names that are acceptable for the, they're both names of the card, but as far as like collector purposes go, the official name on this card is Valky God of Lies, which is something that I find kind of intriguing. Then again, I'm not much of a collector, so maybe I'm just maybe I'm just blowing smoke with that. But the official front face is Valky God of Lies. That I know for sure. Anyway, this has been a lot of fun, you guys. Thank you so much for hanging out. I love these gods, I gotta say, and everything I've seen from Kaldheim so far has me super excited. So thank you so much for hanging out. I appreciate you. Don't forget, you are a good person, and you deserve to be happy.